So, Deborah, why do you think America is not #1 on this respect?
You know, that's a really great question. I wish I had the answer to that because then we could solve it. But I would like to point out that it isn't surprising to me in many ways. If we're 37th in the world, according to the World Health Association, in healthcare overall, why would we expect to be #1 in this area? Obviously, there's a lot of work that we have to do. And I think that there's some confusing numbers out there as to what the rest of the world is doing and how they gather, you know, their criteria for ranking what's going on in their situation. But we definitely need to work harder at taking care of mothers, giving them access to care prior to birth, and giving them to care after birth, not just sending them 2 days from the hospital, get out.
I agree with all of that, but I also wonder, I'm a little bit suspicious about how these rankings come about. You know, because a 22-week-old baby who is all of a sudden saved, you know, we don't know what other countries do when somebody goes into labor when you're 22 weeks pregnant. We have the technology, we have the tools so we can save these little babies. I happen to have a friend right now who has a 22, 23-week-old baby who has survived. So I don't know. That could be counted as a miscarriage in another country. I have no idea.
Yeah, but Carrie, even assuming that, I don't think we should be making any excuses for these rates. For example, if we were to break down these rates by race, I think you'd stop making excuses because you would see the correlation between race, poverty. It doesn't come out of people's mouths anymore, even on my side of the aisle. But the fact is there is a direct correlation between race, poverty, and infant mortality. That's the children who are dying.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, if you look at the infant mortality rate, for example, for African-American babies, it's 4 times that than is the case for white babies. To me, these numbers are an indictment on inequality in America. I mean, what's to be done about that?
Well, I mean, I think the health care reform bill was, you know, enacted in hopes of addressing this. Unfortunately, I don't think that it necessarily will. And I'm sure, I know my friends here will disagree with me on that, but I worry that in trying to share costs among everyone, I think that quality and access to care will decline for others as well.
Well, I don't think it's just access to care. I think you've got to get hold of, remember, we're talking often about very young girls who probably shouldn't be having babies at all. It's about getting hold of these mothers when they are very young, when care costs very little, when even the Republicans might think we ought to give some care. It saved gazillions of dollars. For example, you talk about babies that are saved, a lot of money, all because we're not putting a little bit of money when the baby is just being formed.
But we're talking about, you know, the richest country in the world. We're the richest country. So how can you associate being the richest country in the world with ranking 37 or 40, whatever?
Because we don't have as good a system. I mean, France is #1, Italy's #2. They have a better system. They have a healthcare system that's accessible to all people, that it isn't tied to your paycheck. It isn't tied to whether you're employed or not. It isn't tied to whether an insurance company wants to say, you're too much of a cost risk for us. You have a pre-existing condition. We're not going to cover you.
You're going to be, and if you want to be more ashamed, we spend more money than all of them. Not only are we at the bottom, but we're spending more money on health care. And one of the reasons is because we don't have a system that everybody is in the system. Most countries have national systems of one kind or the other. They vary in many ways, but everybody is in the pool. That cost shared is a whole lot cheaper than putting us all in individual little insurance pools. And look at the result we get despite spending more money than any other country on health.
Looking at the 45 industrialized